if I can do this and be like, oh, well, this is how this worked last time, so maybe it'll work again this time, and then if it doesn't work, I can be like, oh, well, then perhaps it wasn't such a good idea, but
Sure.
something to basically help me and maybe to help the other action students. But
Sure. So I think that the way you're setting it up and the way you're going to look at your data, you would not need HSRB approval. Do you agree with that?
I do. Can I step in here for a second?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you see where we're going with this. I want to try to look at this from a couple different angles. A project like yours, Aaron, last year, we would have required our student to do HSRB approval anyway, just because it was a blanket requirement, everybody had to do it. What we're looking at this year is kind of looking at that differently and saying, the fact is, you and I defined at the very beginning of this class in September, action research is things that we do with our own students in our own classroom to try to evaluate our teaching practice and how to teach them better, how to help them, you know? So if you're doing an action research project that is involving your own class with your students and saying, hey, here's what I tried, here's how they reacted, and here's what I learned from that of how I could be a better teacher, which is what most action research is all about, then you really don't need human subjects approval to make that happen, okay? On the other hand, going back to Hillary's comment about involving multiple classes and so forth, if you design a research project that says, I'm going to have a control group and an experimental group, and I'm going to do this with one group and this with another group, and I'm going to compare them and run a test and show that one is doing better than the other, and try to publish that and say this is what everybody ought to be doing, and try to generalize that to the population, then that's considered research that needs to have human subjects approval, okay? And that's why from the very beginning I've kind of discouraged you from thinking of this in terms of experimental research and thinking more in terms of classroom research, because it's a lot more straightforward. It's a lot more, as maybe the second bullet under there about BGSU class projects, okay? Because this is a class. This is EDHD 3160. So as a class project, you're coming up with something that you're going to do in your classroom to try to improve your teaching. And if that's what the purpose of it is, to gather data about what your students are learning, how they're learning it, how to teach them better, etc., it's really for improvement of your practice in your classes, and that would fall into a category that would not require human subjects approval. Does that make some sense? So can we have maybe a couple of other people throw out what you've been thinking about and run by Hillary and let her bat those ideas around a little bit here in terms of whether you might need to file paperwork. So I'm thinking in terms of just timeline of where we are now to where you need to be over the next year, just to kind of summarize a little bit. We need for you to have your topic determined in January, okay, if you're not there already. So by the time we come back to class as we get into the middle of January, you have your topic figured out and you're going to be starting to write your research proposal. You write your research proposal from January to April, and the due date is no later than April 1st to your advisor. Okay, so you've got about 2.5 months to write the proposal itself, which we'll talk a little bit more about in just a second too, but April 1st is your deadline. Your advisors will grade them using a rubric that we provide. The rubric is up at Blackboard, and it is still up at Blackboard, isn't it, Wendy? But anyway, so there'll be a rubric there for you to see. And then they will grade that, and at some point after April 1st, you will find out when so this is your writing time, then you will find out when where your placement is, and you and your advisor will need to think about, is my action research possibly going to need human subjects review? Okay, so that's why we talked about that tonight. So you kind of, there's some that are going to be very obvious, where you know that it's more classroom evaluation, or looking at what you're doing in your own class. There are other situations where you say, I'm doing this with multiple classes, or multiple, using a control group, or collecting other kinds of data where I'm going to try to generalize, and if I do, then I think I might need to have HSRB approval. And as soon as you find your placement out, then sometime soon after you get your placement, you would file a determination form. I'm going to guess that most of you probably won't even need to file that form. But if you're not sure, and you say, I think there's a possibility that we may need approval here, then you're going to need to file that form, but not until after you know your placement, because they're going to want to know where you're going to be doing this research. So that's going to be somewhere between April and early September, because you'll find your placement out sometime probably in here. And you file that form, and they will give you results back to your determination form within a couple of weeks, so by the 1st of October. And then if it's determined that you do have to do a human subjects process, then a couple things have to happen. One is that you have to have training for human subjects. There's an online training that you do, and it does take a few hours to do. Okay, we used to do that live. Hillary would do a training for everybody in the room. We're not going to do that. But you will need to get training, and your advisor also needs to have training. Now, in many cases, advisors have already done that, but if they haven't, they would need to get that also. So you would have to have training for human subjects and file all of the paperwork, and you basically have from October until the end of the year, really realistically December 1st, to file it, because then it takes them 4 weeks to do the process. You'd be into January, and you're going to want to start collecting your data by January. Okay, so and that's where we go from here. Then you, in your student teaching, you collect your data somewhere between January, February, and you write your paper in March, April. It's due, or March. It's due the 1st of April the following year. Okay, so think of that in terms of timeline. Bottom line is we need to get your proposals written by the 1st of April, and then depending on where you fall on the spectrum of human subjects. And as Hillary said, you might file a determination form, have them say, no, you don't have to worry about human subjects, and you're done. Okay, and then you're just waiting until the first, even as student teaching to collect your data. But if you do have to go through that, you'll need to get training and complete the paperwork. Okay, make sense? All right. One of the things that we hope that you'll find helpful, last year when we did this for the first time, we have our guinea pigs working with us here, and we got this really famous question of, what does the research proposal look like, and can we see one that somebody else has already done, so we at least have some models of what our proposal might look like? And of course my answer was, no, there are no models, because this is the first time we've ever been through it. Well, now we've been through it once, and so life will be a little bit easier for you. Because what we've done is we have taken last year's group, we had 21 people that went through last year, and we selected 3 of the proposals. Not really at random, so ones that we wanted you to see kind of as models. And I will tell you as kind of a disclaimer that none of these are perfect. Okay? The idea here isn't to be perfect, and it isn't also to make sure that yours looks exactly like theirs does. But it's just that, sometimes it's good if you're a big picture person, you like to have the idea in your head before you even start of what's this going to look like when I actually finish this proposal. What kind of a thing am I turning in by April the 1st? So what we did is went through the proposals from last year, and if you go under documents,
Information.
information, I like. There is a folder that says sample research proposals, and if you click there, you will find an AYA math proposal that somebody did last year, an AYA science proposal, and a middle childhood research proposal. Okay? These will serve as our models that you can download and take a look at to see what other people did last year. Okay? Just as kind of a starting point so you have an idea in your head. Again, I'm not going to claim that they're perfect. You're going to find some mistakes in them. There's even going to be some typographical errors and things that the faculty advisors caught when they graded them. One of the proposals is a little bit more of a kind of an experimental research design that would absolutely, definitely have to have human subjects approval, okay, and did, actually. So they do look a little bit different, so each one of them is a little bit different. But I had told you to kind of follow the guideline of having somewhere around 8 to 10 pages. That's what you're going to find here. I think these proposals run, the shortest one is about 8 or 9, the longest is 13. So that's kind of, but it gives you an idea of kind of what these look like in terms of references and how they do their literature review and their methodology sections. Okay? That's fine.
Since we don't know our placement, like what kind of school we're in, or like if we're in math or science, especially just for middle childhood, do you want us to generalize as best we can?
Actually, that's a good question, Lauren. What I would recommend is when you write your proposal, write it for kind of ideally what you want to do. So for example, in your case, like let's suppose you say, I really want to do this in a science class. If you want to do a proposal about here's how I'm going to do some research on my science class, go ahead and write that up. And we're gonna be asking you, Wendy, we'll be doing that paperwork by Survey Monkey very soon, right?
Soon, very soon, yes.
Yeah, I think probably within
Very
the next
soon.
few days.
Next few days, yes.
So here's the deal, this is a good opportunity to talk about that. Yeah, put that on the to-do list, wait.
I'm writing it down.
This is what we did last year, worked out pretty well, I think, and that is that we want to try to match you up in a placement at the grade level in classes that you're most interested in teaching that will support your research. Now, of course, in the placement office, they try to do that anyway, but bottom line is, if you're middle childhood and you really want to teach 4th or 5th grade and not 8th grade, then we need to know that. So if you're going to write a research proposal and say, I really want to do this with 4th or 5th graders, we need to know that so we can make sure we place you in a school that needs a 4th or 5th grade person. We don't want to put you in a junior high if you're planning on doing your research with 4th graders, okay? Similarly, you're a math person and you say, really want to do this research on 8th graders in a general math class. I need to know that so we don't place you in a high school teaching pre-calculus. So what we're going to do is we're going to send you a survey by SurveyMonkey where you tell us what grade levels you're most interested in, if you know what your research project is going to be already and you know what, that you have a particular interest. We'll even ask you whether you prefer to be in a rural school, an inner city school, whether you're open to or preferring to be in a private school or parochial school. We're going to ask all that stuff. We'll take all of that information, we take that to the placement office, and we try to match you up with the setting that you're most interested in. So Lauren, if you write your proposal around, I really want to do this with 6th graders in science, and you let us know that when we do the Survey Monkey, we'll try our best to get you in a 6th grade science class to make sure that can happen. Okay. So, but yes, write the proposal around the setting and the courses or whatever that you're most interested in doing. Let us know through that survey that we do with you very soon that that's the setting that you want. And then we'll go from there. And it's really important, by the way, that you fill that form out carefully when you get that survey, because we did have a couple of cases last year where people sort of changed their minds. And once the placements were done, and they were in their schools or assigned to a teacher and kind of ready to roll, and we get a phone call saying, I really would rather have been in a parochial school. And we said, well, why didn't you click that box when you filled that out last fall? So if there's a setting that you really want, or a grade level or whatever, we need to know that. We can't guarantee you'll get exactly what you want, but we'll do our best, but we have to know what your preferences are. Okay, so you can look for that to be coming soon. So that's pretty much it. We will not actually meet again as a group now. From here on, this is you and your advisor working together to create your proposal and have it in by the 1st of April to them.
What is the topic determined as for January? Is it like just for us to decide? Or
Yes.
notify you?
No, I don't even need to be in that loop. This is totally between you and your advisor. So if you and your advisor have a troubleshooting question that you need to ask from human subjects to Hillary or to me in general, we're happy to answer them.
Nothing will turn into-
Nope, nothing comes to me.